reunited, outer and inner, through the mystical marriage with our own being. So that's what's yearning. That's where the yearning comes from. We want to be our own authentic, natural selves, and we don't know what that even means. Each chamber has its own nature. So from the outer ring, where we're saying, I'm starting to wonder who I am, we start to find that we're being infused with a spirit that enlivens our curiosity and fans that little ember into a flame. And because we're curious and we keep looking for that answer, we start to move even closer into another chamber, which fills our existence with a living light. And so in our terminology, we would call that an illumination. This is literally when this living substance that we call light, which also has personality and consciousness, transfuses our bodies and our minds. And that itself is a multifaceted process. It takes years or lifetimes for us to realize what the potential of that is. The moment that we begin this journey, we find ourselves confronted with the need to let go. We're letting go of all of our past concepts, all of our past ideas about who we are, about what life is, what reality is, and then this illumination takes place and we start letting go more and more so that there's more light that comes in and we let go more, and the more light that comes in, the more that we see what needs to be let go of, and we go through many trials and tribulations behind that because it's revealing the little dark corners of our psyche that where we've secreted away our personal demons and haven't dealt with them, and they need to be brought into that light and lovingly transformed. And at some point in that journey, which again, we're talking years and lifetimes, and we find that within that inner ambient field of light that we see, and it's important that we're not talking here metaphorically, this is real light that we see, that we start finding ourselves gravitating towards a brighter place within that ambient field. And we let go, and as we let go, this inexorable pull, the gravitational pull of what it is that exists in that brighter field draws our attention and our focus ever onward, ever deeper into that place, until we see the source of that light, where it is that that light has been emanating from. And at first we don't see it clearly. It's obscured. But through the miracle of initiation, we find that the scales are removed from our eyes, the veil is parted that separates our outer consciousness and our inner being, and we see the source that is not only in us, but that is us. And then the troubles begin, because now we're split into an outer and an inner in a way that we hadn't thought possible before. And that takes a lot of dedication and, again, letting go, being willing to lay it all on the line and die in every conceivable way so that we can be reunited, outer and inner, through the mystical marriage with our own being. So that's what's yearning. That's where the yearning comes from. We want to be our own authentic, natural selves, and we don't know what that even means. And so now we're brought into that place, and we have the opportunity to no longer be looking at the source that we are, the God being that we are. We become the thing that we've beheld. And so instead of looking within, we are now at the center of being. So that, in the broadest terminology, is how I view the process of initiation. Each of these stages has its own beginning and end. Each of these chambers has its own threshold that we cross over. There's a definite before and after to that. And there's a common experience that people have as they're crossing that threshold, and they meet the resistance that we have to letting go and to making that transition. It's a resistance that the body, our animal body, knows as dying. We said, Jesus, I've been here before, I'm dying, I don't want to do this, right? But we let go, we die, we're reborn, we die, we're reborn, and each stage takes us deeper into that place where we come in contact with the source. So there you go. Now you know everything that there is to know.
I know everything now. We do. I liked in the beginning the way you said about the awakening, where we come to the point where early on, of course, where we realize that there's something more that we're not seeing, that, you know, we've grown up and accustomed ourselves to being in this physical form and being in this world. And then something happens, and all of a sudden we know this can't be it. There's something else. So remember reading one time long ago in the beginning stages of my path, where the person said he felt like the world was painted on a screen, and he wanted to know what's behind that screen, what's projecting onto that screen. And so I'm sure that that most people who are watching this are going to, you know, be probably more along the path. You know, they've already gone through that experience of awakening, but maybe some aren't, and this might come as news to them, or strike a note with them that would give them some kind of an aha. You know, like, oh wow, this is what I'm going through right now. So that's good. And I hope that, you know, I've talked with so many people that have been going through experiences and ask me, am I okay? You know, am I crazy? And I remember reading in the Golden Force, you know, for instance, where it says, you're not crazy because you're the way God made you. And so this process of awakening is like, it's like an inner process of our inner faculties starting to open up. And then we see the limitations of what our physical senses are picking up. And we start to become more aware of those inner realities that before we only could sense as maybe emotions or you know, feelings and you know, and conscience. You know, it's like the initiations seem to have a direct effect on our conscience. When I've gone through initiations, and I've heard this from many other people too, it is literally like everything has changed in some kind of fundamental way. I'm seeing the world differently, and I'm I begin to receive things that in a different way, um, different in clarity, different in intensity, um, different in that maybe the pace has sped up, where intuitive knowledge is showing me things that I never saw before, and I'm understanding things that I never understood before. And it really does feel like I've moved to a different city, or into a different house. And just as we do when we do move to a different city or into a different house, there's a lot of just getting used to it. And all your routines are changed, and the people are different, and that's the degree to which I've experienced it. And I know I've talked with so many people that have described it in similar ways, that your life is fundamentally changed, and you don't know how or why. It just all of a sudden is. Does that ring true? Is it?
Yeah, absolutely. That is a common experience to the initiations. They're disorienting. And if they're not disorienting, then you really probably haven't gone through the initiation yet.
Yeah. Or that
We're talking about dimension, right? And if we're moving through dimensions vibrationally, and we understand what dimension is in the three-dimensional world, we have height and width and depth. Each one of those is perpendicular to the others, right? Height, vertical, horizontal, and depth are all, each of them, perpendicular to the other two. The next dimension is perpendicular also to all three of those, and try to draw that. You can't, right? And so just that should be a disorienting thing. I know when I'm standing up, I know when I'm laying down, I know when I'm moving at an angle. Doggone it, I don't know how to describe that other place.
Right,
and
right.
It's learning to get our sea legs under us when we learn to navigate in these other realms. And I find that it does open up the ability for us to be attuned to other frequencies. And so we know that quantum physics is telling us now what mystics have long known, and that is that we live in a multiverse. All these universes exist now in this moment right here. And so how do I experience that? And if my own set point is so fixed at a certain place on the radio dial, for those of us who remember analog radio dials, where you turn the dial and the little indicator would slide across where you're tuning in. All those frequencies, all those radio stations are in the same airspace now, right? But because you're tuning that radio dial, that frequency receptor moves and it starts tuning out everything else that isn't this frequency. And now you start to become aware of just this one station. Most of us are just aware of one station, the physical world that we live in. But we start through the initiations, find that we have access to that radio dial, and we can start to move it up and down that scale. What happens for some people is that as you're moving, as you remember those radios, you'd be turning that dial and you had a nice clear lock on your favorite station, but it starts to fade out because you're driving around and you're getting out of it, its ability to receive that station. And so you start looking for another one, and now you have this, what was a nice strong station, and it's fading out, and all of a sudden there's a garble. You got different stations, all this going on, and then you tune into the new station and it's crystal clear. And if you keep turning the dial, the same thing happens. It's nonsense, it's crazy, and then it's clear again. And it's that nonsense and crazy part that gets people doubting what's happening even on a sanity level, because you're losing your mind. And if you're not losing your mind, then you're, again, I don't think you're going through the initiation, because you've got to move from point A to point B, and there's only one way to do it, and that's to lose your mind and be reformed here. It's the end of the world as you know it. And so all those stories about the end of days and the apocalypse and all that, to me, are stories about what it's like to have your world end. You know?
Yeah, I really like the way you describe that with the radio dial, and it's not just pure static or white noise, which is what I like about your description, because it can be a merging of the two, and intelligence there, but it's garbled, and you're getting conflicting information, and everything is topsy-turvy and chaotic. And it clearly is what we're going through now, I think, societally, and because something is happening on a mass scale that I don't think any of us can deny, right? I mean, it's something big is up. And so, yeah. I think that one of the ways that we can help is just simply knowing that that's what happens when we go through, when we're leaving one known state and moving into an unknown state that we may have glimpses of, but it's the transitioning part that can really be disturbing. And if a person doesn't know that that's normal, quote unquote, then they might seriously doubt their sanity, and then out of self-preservation retreat to the known, and it might take them a long time to then approach it again, because they've gotten burnt, so to speak. It was a bad trip, and they don't want to go through that again. So, but when someone comes along and says, no, I know what you're experiencing, because I've been there, and here's how it works, and here's what you can expect, I think that's a real service.
It is a service. And if there's one thing that I believe we as seekers, and by that I mean finders, right? If you seek, you will find. That one thing that's incumbent upon us during this time more than any other is to be a placeholder and a point of affirmation for what is real and happening. Because there is all this confusion, and then there is all this fear, and there is a disruption to the force, and we need to know that there's a direction and a place of certainty at the core of it all, in spite of all the appearances of chaos and destruction. That it's a necessary movement of that dial, to keep hammering on that metaphor. It's a necessary movement. We can't stagnate. Stagnation is antithetical to growth, and the universe doesn't put up with it. It demands growth, and it demands change. So stasis is not a thing that exists, and we can't claim our little corner of reality and stake it out and double down on it and say, you'll take my reality when you pry it from my dead cold hand. Right? It's that kind of a grasp, a death grasp that people have on it, and it's fear-inducing to have what has been certain undermined and eroded, and you can feel that there's change in the air, and doggone it, I don't like it. And so we either double down on it, like you said, we retreat into the known, or we say, I let go. I'm
Yeah.
just go with the flow, as they say, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think that a common mistake, I know I've made it, is that we tend to dive into the fray, thinking, into the chaos, and try to sort it out, and try to convince other people, no, this is what is right, or this is what is real, when that, I have found, just does not work. That I think the best thing that we can do is stand in the place where we're going, because in reality that's where we are. We've covered this ground, and now everybody else is covering the ground, and I think the best thing we can do is stand on that ground and say, this way, come this way, and not try to get in and participate in the chaos in any way. Anyway, that's the realization that I've been coming to, is that to get involved in those fights in politics or philosophy or any of these things that just so readily and easily divides people, that's not where we want to be. We want to be standing in the holy place, and being that beacon, that assurance to people that what they're going through is temporary, and that it's part of the process, and that the best thing they can do is surrender to it, not without letting it roll over them, but for them not to engage in it, but to focus even more intently on their inner work, because that's where the path is. It's not out here in this chaos. So that might sound a little, escapist and shirking responsibility, but it's really not. It's really the most responsible thing we can do, and to reach out in heart and in mind to those of us who are also trying to be that beacon, to support them spiritually, so that we can actually be a force for good in the world, and not just adding more to the problem.
that is so true. There's a story in the Bible that has informed me about what my approach to life and activism and all of that is and should be. And that's the story about the Master Jesus encountering a gentleman who had a withered arm, right? And so he sees this guy with the withered arm, and he tells him, friend, stretch your arm out towards me, basically. Stretch forth your arm. And he does. And the Bible says, and his arm was restored whole. Well, how the heck did that happen? Well, I'm meditating on it, I'm looking at it, and it becomes real clear to me that two things happened. One was that Jesus saw that the guy had a withered arm. He wasn't ignorant of the fact that what this guy's what his condition was in his own mind. Mm-hmm. But that Jesus didn't believe it. He saw the man as whole, saw that arm as whole, and had never seen it as anything other than whole. He knew that it has always been whole. And so when that man put his arm forward like that, it was like slipping into a glove of wholeness that the Master held so clearly for him that the flesh and bone had to conform to it. Well, I go, okay, well, that's great. So I want to have that kind of vision. Where do I get that kind of knowing and vision about wholeness? And so then I'm looking at all these, like we were talking about, these planes or dimensions, and it became clear to me over the years that working in dimensions, whether it's what we call the physical dimension or the heaven world or the psychic plane or the astral plane or blah, blah, whatever else, what other dimensions that are there, and there appear to be an infinite number, that they all have a problem, that they're temporal, they have a beginning and an end. They're based on duality. There's dimension requires duality to exist. It's like they're containers, right?
Yeah.
Without the container, you don't have dimension, you have the pure potential chaos of being, of intelligence. There's not a word even for it, right? And that is the place then I started saying, okay, I'm going to get rid of all my interest in the phenomenal world and phenomena and things that happen and things that move, that require dimension. I'm here, now I move to there, right? Don't care. What is beyond that? Ramana Maharshi said, I move here and I move there, but self moves not. Like, okay, what the heck is that then? What am I? If I think that I'm moving around, but I'm really not, what is that? And how do I identify with that which is eternal, does not move, is the source, is not affected by phenomena, but is the source of all phenomena? And then I started, okay, well, that's it. That's my whole focus. I'm going to die to every plane that I've ever visited. I'm going to let go of every concept that I've ever held. I'm going to willingly embrace the obliteration of my being, that I might taste of that space, which is beyond space, from which all space and time issues forth. Then, if I visit a realm and I see a need, I can say, friend, stretch forth your arm. But if I'm just going around and seeing needs everywhere, which are manifest everywhere, real easy to see, and I get caught up in my reactions to them and my heartfelt desire and an emotional response to correct these things or to see them fixed, I run the very real risk of becoming part of the problem rather than part of the cure. I lose my vision of the source, the wholeness, the glove that was offered. And so, yeah, I'm really with you on it. This is obviously a big topic for me. When you start to give lip service to this idea of moving away from the world of phenomena, of good and evil, of up and down, all of that, and it looks like you're opting to put on those rose-colored glasses and take a Pollyanna-ish view of the world and say, it's all good, man. You know, well, it is all good, but not because we're deluded and ignoring the reality that people are dealing with and the pain and the suffering and the anguish and the very human experience, you know. it's a tough place to get to,
Yeah.
and it's even tougher place to sink your roots deep into and to anchor yourself to, because we are in the physical world. We still are tied to our physical bodies. We're subject to the whims and the currents of current events and what the latest news feed is. You know, there's a human reaction to those things, colored by our worldviews. And that's a whole nother topic, because where does our personal worldview come from? And is it better than somebody else's worldview? You know,
You think it would be fair to say that as we move through the initiations, that worldview becomes more universal?
yes, I do, but not in the way that I used to think of it. I used to think that the further along everybody goes on the initiatory path, the more they will be like me.
In other words, better, right? Better.
Yeah, because I'm embracing a more enlightened view of life. Be it more liberal, be it more progressive, be it more whatever it is, that I see that, yeah, when they get it together, they'll figure this out. I've known people who have been high functioning master teachers who had worldviews that were 180 degrees different than mine, influenced by who knows what, upbringing, reactions to upbringing, indoctrination, the mass mind of the time and place that they were growing up in. Who knows? Who cares? Because ultimately, and this would be true for those people that I'm talking about, to a person, they just said, that doesn't matter. That's not what this is about, anyways.
Right.
I'm beyond that. If you want to get, have a beer with me and talk about, the condition of the world, yeah, chances are we're going to look under the hood of each other's, makeup and find things that are disagreeable, right? But that's not, there's another way to approach each other that doesn't look under that hood. There's a deeper hood.
There's a deeper hood. Yeah, I think that, for most of us, I think that getting into that first hood, getting under that first hood, actually gets in the way of our process of initiation, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it does. It so does. And that was one of the things that I valued and value even more now in retrospect about the training that we had in common, was that we were decidedly discouraged from talking about what's under the hood.
Yeah.
Our past, our political views, any of that. There was another thing to be focusing on.
Right. Yeah, I think it's it's really important that we each of us personally strive to I hate this term, but rise above it. It's so cliche, but it's so true. It is so true. When everybody's drowning, you've got to get to the surface and onto dry land, or you're just going to drown with them. And the world of opinion, the realm of opinion, let's call it that, is just a chaotic sea. It's a mess, because there's always opposition. There's always this and that, So it's a hard one, because so many people now feel the responsibility to fix the world, But I'm beginning to think that the world is not only can't be fixed, but isn't in need of being fixed, because what the world is experiencing right now, just as we were talking about with moving through the initiations, is the process. And like you said, we love the static. We cling to the static. We want things to stay the same. We don't like change. And yet that's all there is change. Lao Tzu talked about that extensively in the Tao Te Ching. And so if anything, we have to demonstrate in our own personal lives the ability to surrender to that change, to submit to the process, because it's that same process. Really, I think what the world is going through now is just an outpicturing of this internal process we're talking about, and that some are calling this the era or the age of awakening, which is nice. It's a nice term for it. I hope it sticks. And so there's nothing else to do but to go with it, to stand down. It's to just ride this out and not get involved, because there are plenty of people out there getting involved, and they're going to figure it out eventually. But if we lose sight of the reality of the process, then not good. We have to stand in the holy place.
That is so true. And I've gone through various iterations of that, where my spirit of renunciation has withdrawn from the world around me in ways that isolated me, sometimes positively and sometimes not so much. And then an expression and expansion back out into the world, and in ways that help me serve and bond with things, but also in ways that knock me off my center again. And so it's that ebb and flow that has been continuous. And what you were saying about letting go and being willing to basically be non-attached, the path of non-attachment, the Buddhist idea of non-attachment, or what in my mind the master meant when he said, the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. There's no place, there's no comfort place that you have. There's no safe harbor for you. You can't lay claim to this little place in the universal mind and say, come hell or high water, this is where I am. Holding on is antithetical to letting go, and letting go is life, and holding on is death, not the good death, the wrong kind of death. And so, yeah, that willingness to shuck it all. Having said that, I write letters to my congressmen and women and my senators, and I am moved in whatever ways I am moved to engage with the world, and how ridiculous it would be for me to pretend that I am not in a physical body, and that this isn't. Why am I here? Why am I in a body at this particular time? Well, we all have our part to play. It's my hope that that part is informed by this deeper experience that is the result of the initiatory path, rather than a distraction from that path.
Yeah. Matthias Dominic Indra. So in the training that you and I received in the Holy Order of Men's, we went through really specific and well-defined stages of initiation, and whether those stages were were as well defined as we, as we would have liked to have thought that they were. We know that they are processes and that we grow into it. So the word initiation itself means beginning, and we've experienced that. We've experienced receiving an initiation and then actually grow into it, and it becomes a continual process of discovery. My question is, we know that people can come into these awakenings because really that's what they are in every level, right? Each one is a new awakening. That people come into these naturally, and that some people are born with them. And so the question then becomes, what role does the teacher or the initiator play in that process? And of course, you and I know that there are techniques that we work with that have to do with Kundalini forces and training our consciousness in ways that help us perceive and transition into these new awakenings. But can you speak to that? Can you speak to the natural occurrence of an initiation? And because I know you and I both have met people who were illumined, that they had actually gone through the initiation of illumination, but not at the hands of a teacher, and others who were functioning with self, but had not formally gone through the initiation of self-realization. So what can you say about that?
Yeah, big topic too. You don't ask little topic questions. So I had a teacher friend of mine tell me that in his experience, the purpose function of a master was to provide a spiritually charged environment in which the student could perform their own inner alchemy. Okay. And so on a certain sense, that sounds like a hands-off approach, that you're just providing this atmosphere, this environment in which they can unfold. There's more to it, as we're individually guided and directed, because each of us, teachers, students alike, everybody is unique and has their own bag of tricks, and what tools they've accumulated along the way over lifetimes that will help them provide that environment for somebody to unfold in, to flower in. Ultimately, it's the person themselves. Nobody can force anybody across these thresholds. It's a matter of opening a door and making it possible for the person to move through of their own will. It has to be that way. So on a world scale, that spiritually charged environment is happening on a world scale. There's volumes and volumes that you could say about why and how did we come to this place now where that the air that we breathe is filled with that spiritually charged energy that encourages people to let go and to make those changes in their lives that make room for the light to grow in them and have these breakthroughs, even if they've never heard of the light in this context, if they've never followed a spiritual path or believe in God or any of that. It doesn't have anything to do with that. It's in the air that we breathe.
Yeah.
We also know that as that's happening, as I said before, as that increased light enters us individually or collectively in the world mind, that it unveils, it reveals all those hidden places. So that which was said in secret shall be shouted from the rooftop. And, you know, what was done in secret is now known. And we see that happening on all the different levels of society and politics and in ourselves. The things that were hidden are being revealed. And yay, right?
Yeah.
But you're right. There are people that are walking around. I was at a Chipotle a while back, standing in line. I get up to place my order, and there's this kid behind the counter. He's got to be like 17 years old, and he's glowing away like 100-watt light bulb. You know, I know that if I engaged him in a conversation, I would have been surprised if he was, you know, a spiritual person, right? Like had all the language for it.
Yeah.
But you could tell what was happening. There's no way to have that happening in your life, in your atmosphere, that visible aura of light, without having made room in your heart for it. And that makes you a spiritual person, whether you are aware of the language that attends that designation or not, right? That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I think that
I also believe that when a person is moving along on their journey, that there are others who are working on an unseen plane, who are dedicated to work with the souls on earth, and who will help either guide them to a teacher to have helped, a teacher on earth in an earthly body, or who will do the work that needs to be done remotely.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you're living on a desert island somewhere, does that mean that you're SOL, you're out of luck, as far as being able to have an initiation? Well, clearly not. You know,
right.
matter of fact, that would be a really beneficial way to do it. But that doesn't mean that you did it yourself. You may not have been aware of the intercession on your behalf, but there are beings that will help you through that process.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the main ingredient in all of this is surrender, because there's an act of reaching up, right? Whether you want to think of that literally or metaphorically, there's reaching up to that which is clearly greater than you are and more benevolent than you are, right? I mean, there's where the element of trust comes in, because, you know, a lot of people out there think God is like a punishing dictator, and they don't want to go anywhere near him, right? Because they know they've screwed up and they don't want to face their punishment, at least not yet. You know, they're holding that off for as long as possible. And that's really an unfortunate way to view reality, because that which we are moving towards is so much greater and so much better and so much more heart-centered, and there's so much more clarity and truth that it gladly welcomes us, but we have to let go of all of the baggage that we're carrying from, you know, being embroiled in these kinds of conflicts that are endemic to this planet, that we can't get swallowed by the hatred. We can't, you know, the path is like a razor's edge, and the farther along we go, the sharper that edge gets, and the perils become that much greater, because there's so much hatred on one side and so much fear on the other, that it's so easy to slip into that. And so I think the real opportunity in all of this is to learn forgiveness, and to learn trust, to trust in the process, knowing that, yes, we will get through this. This is a transitional phase. And the only thing that can really save us in the process is forgiveness and opening up our hearts and truly learning what it means to love your enemy. Because, you know, we're so quick as human beings to demonize our opponents. And that is a spiritual killer, you know, to my way of thinking anyway, that in forgiveness is really the answer.
Yeah. Yeah, well put. You know, every poll that they do on virtually any topic pretty much comes back a 50-50 split within a margin of error. People who are for it, people who are against it, whether
Right. Yeah.
guns, abortion, you know, environment, you know, COVID-19, whatever it is, you put a poll out there, it comes back 50-50, which means that half of the people on the planet, you know, what is that? 3.5 billion people, more than that now,
Right.
think differently than you do.
Yeah, they're despicable.
And so are they all just, you know, screwed? You're just like, no.
Well, of course.
Does, you know,
We don't want them in heaven, right?
we're told that God is no respecter of persons. He makes the sun to shine on the just and the unjust and the rain and all that. If that's the case, if there's a level of being where morality, our idea of moral and worldview, doesn't matter, then again, we're getting back to where do we go in ourselves that shines light on that place, that shows us that, yeah, I do love these people. I do, you know, how can I not? Why would I not? What is it? Am I that shallow that all I'm doing is judging and reacting to the outer incrustation of their personality and their, even as much as it might grate against my worldview and my personality, I don't want to be playing that game with myself or with others. So when they say, Father, forgive them for they know not what they do, that's got to be aimed back at myself as well. At that level, I'm saying, yeah, forgive me for I'm stupid as, you know, I'm as dumb as a box of hammers here. Same thing with them. We're all walking around, you know, lost, groping, trying to figure it out. And the best that we've come up with is to have these worldviews that we're going to live and die by and fight to the death over. And so let's all move. So that's, again, back to the very source. Why do we have initiation? What can they produce for us? Is that experience that is beyond the good and bad, the morals, the judgments, brings us to that place of understanding and forgiveness that you're talking about, and we see the all good.
Yes. Well, we've gone a little over an hour now, and we probably should draw it to a close. But we'll live to fight another day. So I really want to thank you, Matthias, for doing this. I know a lot of people are going to be very interested to watch this, and because I think we've covered a lot of ground that people have a lot of questions about, real questions and concerns about their own place on the spiritual path and what they can expect and what they're going to want to know more, I'm sure. So maybe we can get together again sometime and talk some more on this.
Love to.
All right, great. Well, I'm Michael Maciel, and I've been talking with Matthias Dominic Indra, and I'm speaking from Sonoma, California, and Matthias is in Newberg, Oregon, right? Newberg, yeah, close to Portland. So Thanks a lot, Matthias. This has been really great. Okay. Let's see. There. Took me a long time to learn how to do that. Okay. Take care.
Adios, man.
Bye-bye.